My name is Pamela. Standing in my sister's kitchen, chaos surrounded me. My mother sat at the table, face buried in her hands. My sister, Lily, was on the phone, her voice breaking as she tried to find a lawyer. And just moments ago, I watched in a daze as my brother-in-law, Ryan, was led out in handcuffs by the police. A few days prior to this, I had filed a police report. But let me back up. I was looking forward to this family reunion. My family had always been a bit scattered, but this time, my strict and somewhat old-fashioned father rented a beach house for the weekend. It was the same house we used to visit during summer vacations when I was a kid. Everyone showed up, my sister Lily, her husband Ryan, my cousins, and even my aunt who usually skipped these events. The beach house had twinkling lights strung around the porch, and the smell of grilled seafood filled the air. For a while, I allowed myself to believe that we were a normal, happy family. I had to leave around 9 o'clock that night because I had an early morning shift at the art gallery where I worked. I hugged my father goodbye, promised Lily I'd call her during the week, and drove the 45 minutes back to my apartment. With the windows down, the sea breeze blew through my hair, and I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in a long time. But that feeling was short-lived. When I got home, I kicked off my shoes and, out of habit, opened my banking app. The number on the screen was a shock. My savings account, the one I'd been painstakingly building for 3 years to start my own art studio, which had $52,000 in it that morning, now showed a balance of $287. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transaction history. There it was, a single wire transfer made that afternoon while I was at the beach house, enjoying the family moment. The money had been sent to an account under Ryan's name. I didn't sleep a wink that night. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I called the bank's emergency line. I sat on hold for what seemed an eternity, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The bank employee on the phone was polite but firm. She told me that the transfer was authorized through an old shared account access we'd set up years ago when we were planning a family trip together, and I'd completely forgotten to remove it. It wouldn't be automatically flagged as fraud. If I wanted it investigated as theft, I'd have to file a police report myself. The next morning, still in yesterday's clothes and with red-rimmed eyes from crying, I drove to Lily's house before my shift at the gallery. Lily opened the door looking irritated, like I was interrupting something important. When I told her what had happened, she barely reacted. She just called for Ryan. He came downstairs in his pajamas, sipping a cup of coffee as if nothing in the world was wrong. I looked him straight in the eye and asked if he had taken the money from my account. He didn't even try to deny it. He just gave me that smug look of his and said, "Pamela, we need this money more than you do. You're still single and don't have the financial responsibilities we have." I stood there in that kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd helped Lily decorate when they moved in, where I'd celebrated all their family milestones. I felt a cold anger settle inside me. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. I picked up my bag from the counter and stared him down. "Then you won't like what's coming next." He and Lily both laughed, a short, derisive laugh, as if I had told a bad joke. "What are you going to do, cry about it?" Ryan said, setting his coffee cup down so hard that some coffee spilled. "This is family money. You should be more understanding." I didn't say another word. I walked out of that house with a burning feeling in my chest, but I refused to cry in front of them. I sat in my car in their driveway for a long time, trying to calm my shaking hands before I could drive. By the time I reached the police station, I knew this wouldn't end quietly. That afternoon, I filed the report, providing the police with every detail, bank records, transfer confirmations, screenshots of Ryan's name on the receiving account. The officer taking my statement reassured me that theft between family members was still a crime under the law and that they'd get in touch with me within the week. I didn't expect things to escalate so quickly. 3 days later, I found myself back in that very kitchen. My father was on one side of me, scolding me for tearing the family apart. Lily was screaming that I had ruined everything. Ryan was standing by the counter, looking as confident as ever, thinking he had gotten away with it. Just then, a loud bang shook the house. The front door burst open, and in walked 2 police officers with their guns drawn, along with a detective I'd met at the police station. The detective scanned the room until his eyes landed on Ryan. "Ryan Thompson," he said. It wasn't a question. My father gasped and grabbed the counter. Lily's face turned as white as a sheet. Ryan dropped his coffee cup, shattering it on the floor. For the first time, he looked truly afraid. "You're under arrest for theft by deception and unauthorized electronic transfer," the detective said, reaching for the handcuffs. One officer read him his rights while the other kept a watchful eye on the room. My father started pleading with the officers, asking them to give Ryan a chance and let the family handle it. Lily was yelling at me, saying I had destroyed her family. I stood by the doorway, arms wrapped around myself, watching as a man I once trusted was led away in handcuffs. He wouldn't even look at me, he just stared at the floor. After the police car drove away, the detective asked if we could talk privately. We stepped out onto the porch. He told me that when they started looking into Ryan's financial records because of my report, they discovered something else. Ryan had been slowly siphoning money from his own grandmother's savings account for almost a year. He started with small amounts, then took larger sums, using the same old shared access loophole. His grandmother rarely checked her statements, and Ryan had counted on that. I was stunned. I had thought I was the only victim. The detective said the investigation was expanding, and there might be more victims they hadn't found yet. He thanked me for coming forward and said that if I hadn't filed the report, Ryan would likely have continued his schemes, possibly targeting someone who couldn't afford to lose money. When I walked back inside, the atmosphere in the kitchen was different. My father was sitting at the table, looking lost. Lily was still on the phone, desperately trying to find a good lawyer. No one was calling me selfish anymore. My father looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and just said my name, as if he didn't know what else to say. I took a deep breath and told him, as gently as I could with my heart still racing, that I hadn't done this to hurt anyone. I had done it because no one else was going to stand up for me. And it seemed that no one had been protecting Ryan's grandmother either. It took about 5 months for everything to play out in court. Ryan was charged with multiple counts of theft, including mine. The financial records painted a much darker picture than any of us could have imagined. He had been exploiting the trust of his family for years. The court ordered restitution, and little by little, my $52,000 started to make its way back to me. But the family I once knew was gone. Lily and I rarely talk now. She still believes I betrayed her by going to the police instead of handling it within the family. But I've come to terms with it. I worked hard for that money, pulling late nights and weekends at the gallery, turning down vacations to save up. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even family, take what was rightfully mine. My father and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. He eventually apologized to me, in a quiet way that didn't completely erase the hurt of what he'd said that day, but it was a start. I don't know if Ryan will ever feel remorse for what he did. People like him often don't. But I know I'm a different person now. I've learned that standing up for myself isn't selfish, even when those who are supposed to love me try to convince me otherwise. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been made to feel guilty for defending yourself, please hit that subscribe button before you leave. There are many more stories of betrayal, justice, and the courage to say enough on this channel. Subscribe now, so you don't miss what's coming next.